Sometimes the smartest thing that we can do is shut up and ask better questions. Many learning projects and sessions fail because we ask the wrong questions or none at all. Have you ever been in any of these situations before? Say you're sitting in a facilitated training session, probably on Teams, and the trainer is going on, and you've lost track of what they're talking about. Or maybe you're the one doing the facilitating and you feel like you've done your best to try and explain something, but everyone in the room is just staring back at you blankly. Or maybe you're in a meeting with stakeholders to kick off a training project and you feel the pressure to say yes to everything, even though you're not sure training will actually solve the problem. Or maybe you roll out that training program and 3 months later, people are still doing things the same old way. These are real problems that we face in HR and L&D. And in this video, I'll show you 3 simple ways to use questions to teach, persuade, and solve real-life problems like these, whether you're in a workshop, a coaching session, or a tricky stakeholder meeting. Questions are one of the most powerful tools we have. And sometimes the smartest thing that we can do is shut up and ask better questions. So let's look at 3 ways to use questions in your practice, whether you're designing learning, facilitating a session, or in a high-stakes stakeholder meeting. First, you can use concept check questions to check understanding. Here's the trap. You're running a workshop or delivering a presentation, and you explain something, and then you ask, any questions? Or does that make sense? Or do you understand? And everyone nods. But do they really understand? Well, who knows? Not always. Maybe they spaced out. Maybe they don't want to look stupid. Maybe they think they get it, but they actually don't. That's where concept check questions can come in. I first came across these when I was training as an English language teacher. And in that world, it's not enough for learners to say they understand. They have to demonstrate it. It's a subtle shift. Instead of asking someone if they understand a question, you ask a question that shows whether they actually do. For example, you could say, can you give me an example of how you would use that in your work? Or is there a situation where this might not apply? Or how would you explain this to a new team member? These types of questions don't just check for understanding. They also show you, as the facilitator or designer, whether your explanation landed. And if it didn't, you can clarify, reframe, or go deeper. They're useful anytime you want to make sure a key idea has stuck before you move on. Here are some other ways that you could use this in a workplace learning context. If you're dealing with policies, procedures, or frameworks, you could ask a question like, what's one example of a behavior that would breach this policy? If you're doing compliance and risk training, you could ask something like, what would you do differently if this happened during peak hours when everyone was really busy? Or if you're in an onboarding and induction context, you could ask, can you describe how you would escalate a customer complaint? If you're running change management and communication programs, you could ask, if this change goes ahead, what might be different for your team? The point isn't to put people on the spot. It's to make sure they're with you, not just nodding along. It shifts the dynamic from, I'm the expert, here's the answer, to let's make sure this actually lands before we move on. Next, you can use calibrated questions to handle tricky conversations. Have you ever been in a conversation where you felt stuck? Perhaps you encounter a subject matter expert with a strong opinion, or a resistant stakeholder, or maybe someone drops a slightly controversial comment in a training room and you don't want to kill the vibe. For example, you could be running a leadership training program and a participant says, some people just aren't cut out for leadership. You either have it or you don't. Or perhaps you're scoping a project and a manager says, we already tried training and it didn't work. Or you're planning a change initiative and a senior stakeholder says, we just need people to stop complaining and get on with doing their job. Now, in those situations, a lot of people think they only have 2 choices. 1, directly challenge the speaker and risk conflict. Or 2, say nothing and keep the peace. Both options seem not ideal, but there is a third option, one that keeps the conversation open. We can ask the person a calibrated question instead. For example, instead of directly refuting the person who thinks leadership can't be learned, you could ask, how confident are you in that belief on a scale of 1 to 10? Or instead of defending training, ask, why do you think the training didn't work last time? Or to the stakeholder who says staff should stop complaining, what do you think is making people speak up now? In How to Have Impossible Conversations, Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay advocate using these types of calibrated questions. They're open questions that probe how these opinions were formed. We're not challenging the opinion or the person directly, but we're exploring the underlying assumptions. These types of questions lower defensiveness, keep the conversation open, and help someone reflect on their thinking without losing face. The key is don't debate. Instead, ask and listen. And once you start using them, you'll notice how often people begin to open up. Not because they've been convinced, but because they've been heard. Third, you can use performance consulting questions to get to the real problem. If you've been in L&D for a while, you've probably experienced this classic L&D moment. A stakeholder comes up to you and says, we need training on insert topic here. Can you build us that training? And the mistake that we sometimes make is that we say yes too quickly. But we know sometimes training isn't actually the solution, right? I've done this. Early in my career, I said yes, and I rolled out a sales training across a global retail network. What was the impact of that sales training? Well, in many regions, not much, unfortunately, because the underlying issues which were affecting sales, including management, systems, and job design, weren't addressed because I didn't know to ask about them. That's where performance consulting questions come in. They help us get to the real problem, not just the perceived one. So next time, try asking questions like, what's the actual behavior you want to see more of? Or what's happening now that shouldn't be? What does success look like in measurable terms? What's getting in the way besides skills or knowledge? Sometimes you really might have to drill down with some of these questions, asking or rephrasing the question 3 or 4 times before you've got a satisfactory answer. But these questions are game changers in project scoping, interviews with subject matter experts, behavioral change initiatives, or any kind of compliance and capability uplift work. This approach draws on the thinking of people like Kathy Moore, Dana and Jim Robinson, and Harold Stolovich, people who have been saying for years, don't start with the training, start with the problem. These are the questions that help you go beyond content delivery and become a true business partner. Here's the thing. Whether you're helping someone connect new ideas, navigate a tough conversation, or rethink a business challenge, your ability to ask the right questions at the right time is what builds your credibility. It's what helps people say, that was a great session. It really made me think. Or, that conversation went better than I expected. Or, you helped me see something that I hadn't considered. That's the impact of questions. Not just solving problems, but shifting how people think and how they experience working with you. And in an environment where people are short on time and attention, asking the right questions can do more than any slide deck ever could. Using questions to change perspectives and help people learn isn't anything new. Way back in ancient times, Socrates used the Socratic method to help people explore their own thinking, uncover assumptions, and arrive at insights. Not by being told the answer, but by thinking their way to it. So, if you want to make more impact in your work, start by asking better questions. Whether you're teaching, persuading, or trying to get to the heart of a messy problem, questions are your sharpest tool. Don't just deliver content. Don't just say what you think people want to hear. Instead, shut up and ask the right kind of questions that shift thinking. I'm Cain Prentice, Learning Designer at Pukeko Learning Solutions.